Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're exploring the story and the significance of Abraham's covenant with God.
Mm,
It's kind of amazing, right? This ancient story still has a huge impact on so many people.
it really does.
Beliefs and values, all sorts of things across multiple religions and cultures, even today.
It's remarkable how something from so long ago can still feel so relevant.
Yeah, and we're going to try and figure out why that is. We've got some theological texts lined up that'll help us understand what the covenant really means. Plus, we found this really cool YouTube video that tells the whole story in a really engaging way.
Those are great resources, really get to the heart of it all.
So the covenant, right? Well, it all boils down to these three promises God made to Abraham: offspring, land, and a universal blessing. But they weren't just simple gifts or anything like that. They were symbolic, deeply symbolic. They meant something much bigger.
Exactly. They carried profound implications.
So let's break it down, starting with the promise of offspring. What I find interesting is it wasn't just about Abraham having a family. It was about like the creation of a whole nation.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It wasn't just about biological lineage. This promise was about establishing a spiritual lineage,
Mhm.
people dedicated to God, carrying on Abraham's faith.
I like how one of the sources puts it. They were meant to be a beacon to the world.
That's a great way to describe it.
And then there's the promise of land. I mean, obviously, right, having a physical space for this nation was key. They had to have somewhere to thrive. But I'm guessing it meant more than just owning property, right?
You're right. You're right.
Mm.
Back then, land was tied to a lot of things: belonging, identity, security. This promise made sure that Abraham's descendants would have a place to call their own, somewhere to root their identity, build their future.
Okay, so we have offspring and land, but it's that third promise, the universal blessing, that really gets me thinking. It wasn't meant to just stay within Abraham's descendants. It was meant to spread outwards, ultimately blessing the entire world.
That's where the idea of Abraham as a new Adam comes into play. So, like, just as humanity experienced a fall from grace through Adam, the idea is that God was offering a path to redemption and blessing through Abraham, a fresh start for all humankind.
Interesting. Okay, so we have these three huge promises, but were they just handed over, no strings attached? Our sources seem to highlight Abraham's faith and obedience, like those were critical.
Oh, absolutely. One source really zeroes in on how God chose Abraham, specifically chose him because of his unwavering faith. But that brings up an interesting question. Was the fulfillment of the covenant conditional? Like, did it depend on his descendants upholding their end of the bargain?
Right, because some theological perspectives, they suggest it was. They emphasize the responsibility that came with those blessings.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then you have other sources that present a different view. They argue that God, because of who he is, always keeps his promises, regardless of human actions.
That's a good point. Really speaks to God's commitment, like his pledge to the covenant wouldn't just disappear because of human fallibility.
Yeah, it's a fascinating debate. Both sides have some thought-provoking things to say.
It reminds me of the story of Moses. God spared Israel from destruction because of the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, even though they had strayed from the path.
Right, right.
This
Yeah.
seems to suggest a level of divine commitment that goes beyond human behavior.
It's it's a powerful example,
Yeah.
and it sets us up to really dig deeper into this complex covenant.
All right, so let's switch gears a bit. Let's dive into this YouTube video we mentioned. It starts by giving us a picture of the world that Abraham lived in, a world that had turned away from the one true God.
Yeah, it portrays this time of spiritual darkness.
Mhm.
People had abandoned their creator and turned to idols, seeking guidance from inanimate objects, even the dead.
Yeah, and you see like just how different the spiritual climate was back then.
Definitely.
And then the video explains that Abraham and his family were like initially polytheistic. They believed in many gods.
That's an important detail. It shows how radical Abraham's decision was to follow the one true
He
God.
was going against like everything, his culture, his upbringing, even his own family. Makes you wonder, what made him make such a drastic change.
It's a huge question.
So the video then goes to the moment when God calls Abraham, commands him to leave his homeland, journey to this new land.
Right.
Can you imagine that? Leaving everything you know, just based on the word of a God you're just starting to understand.
That must have taken some serious faith.
To choose the unknown over the familiar, to trust in a promise that seems impossible. It says a lot about Abraham's character.
It does.
So he chooses to obey. And as you might expect, his journey isn't all smooth sailing. The video describes this famine, right? Forces him and his family to travel to Egypt.
Right.
And then Abraham does this thing that a lot of people find confusing. He tells Pharaoh that Sarah is his sister, not his wife.
To protect himself.
Yeah, exactly. It's a reminder that even people of faith have moments of weakness. Fear and self-preservation can lead us to, compromise our integrity, even when we think we're following God's plan.
It's human nature, I guess.
But thankfully, God steps in, protects Sarah, and sends plagues on Egypt. And so Abraham and Sarah leave Egypt, leave with tons of wealth, but then this new prosperity leads to another challenge. They have to separate from Lot, Abraham's nephew.
Oh, right, because their herds were too big.
Yeah, their combined herds were just too large to graze together. So even blessings can lead to complications.
It's a good reminder that life, it's rarely straightforward, even when you're trying to follow a path of faith.
So they separate. And Lot, he chooses to settle near these cities, Sodom and Gomorrah.
Not the best choice.
Yeah, that sets the stage for some pretty dramatic events, but we'll have to save that for part 2 as our deep dive. Yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah, not exactly known for being, family friendly.
It's like setting the stage for disaster.
And that's where this video really kicks things up a notch.
Yeah, it starts describing this war. It erupts between 4 kings and 5 kings.
5 kings.
Yeah, 5 kings who rule over the cities in the region, including Sodom and Gomorrah.
So it wasn't like some small local thing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
This is a major clash. The video makes it seem like a battle between good and evil. And guess who's caught right in the middle?
A lot.
Lot. Taken prisoner by those 4 kings who won.
It must have been terrifying. I wonder what Abraham thought when he heard the news.
It's like, what do you do? Risk your own safety, the safety of your people, all to rescue your nephew.
Tough spot. But the amazing thing is, Abraham, he doesn't even hesitate. Gathers his men, 318 of them.
Wow.
And they launch this daring rescue, chase those kings all the way to Damascus.
Damascus.
Yeah, Damascus. And he frees Lot and gets all the stolen goods back.
That's incredible. He was like a real hero.
Yeah, more than just loyalty, right? It takes real courage to do something like that. And it's after this whole rescue thing that we meet this really interesting figure, Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, yeah. The video calls him the king of righteousness and the king of peace.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like some divine figure shrouded in mystery.
King of righteousness, king of peace. Those titles, they definitely make you curious.
And even his name, Melchizedek, it means king of righteousness, and he's also called the king of Salem, which means peace. So it's like, these dual titles. They suggest he has this unique role, maybe as a mediator between God and humanity. But the Bible never really explains who he is or where he came from.
So this mysterious Melchizedek, he blesses Abraham, right? Offers him bread and wine. But then the king of Sodom shows up. He wants to give Abraham all the spoils of war, as a reward for rescuing Lot.
Quite a contrast, right? Melchizedek with these simple gifts, bread and wine, and then you have the king of Sodom offering wealth and possessions.
Yeah, must have been tempting to just accept that reward after such a risky rescue.
Big test. Would Abraham take the spoils from a corrupt city, or would he stick to his commitment to God, his decision? Well, it says a lot about what he valued.
So what did he do?
He refused. Said he'd made an oath to God, the Most High, wouldn't take anything that belonged to belonged to Sodom.
He chose integrity over, over getting rich.
Exactly. Showed his commitment to God and that he wasn't tempted by worldly things. He knew that true wealth and blessing, well, they came from somewhere else.
There's this little detail in the video that I thought was interesting. It mentions Abraham giving a tenth of everything he has to Melchizedek. Why is that important?
It's called tithing, right? And it shows Abraham recognized Melchizedek's spiritual authority, and that he was grateful for God's provision. Some scholars even think it's a foreshadowing of tithing, which became this central practice in the Israelite faith.
Okay, so after this meeting with Melchizedek, what happens next?
Things start moving forward, but they also get more intense. God reaffirms his promises to Abraham, tells him he will have a son.
But wait, weren't Abraham and Sarah like way too old to have kids?
That's what makes it such an incredible promise. It
All right.
seems impossible.
It does.
And then, to make things even more official, God changes Abram's name to Abraham.
Abraham.
Yeah, which means father of many nations. It's like this divine renaming shows his new identity and destiny.
Powerful.
Really powerful. And this is also where circumcision comes in as the sign of the covenant.
So this physical act, it has a deeper meaning.
Oh yeah, for sure. The video says it's about cutting away the sinful nature and embracing a new life in covenant with God. It's an outward sign of an inward transformation.
Interesting. It seems like things are going well for Abraham, but then the video takes a turn. It talks about God's plan to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, because of their wickedness. That's hard to understand. A loving God doing something like that.
Yeah, it's a difficult part of the story. It makes us think about God's justice and mercy. But even in this situation, you see Abraham's compassion. He pleads with God to spare the cities if there are any righteous people living there.
So he's asking for mercy.
He is. He really understands God's character. He's trying to figure out this tension between God wanting justice and God being merciful.
Does it work? Does God agree?
He does, but with a condition.
Yeah.
If even 10 righteous people can be found, Sodom and Gomorrah will be spared.
10 people.
10 people. But yeah, the video shows that the cities were too far gone, full of wickedness. Lot and his family, they get out, but the cities, total destruction, fire and brimstone.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, about sin and God's judgment.
It is, but it also shows that God is both just and merciful. Even when things are bad, He offers a chance for redemption.
And then the video goes on to what might be the most difficult part of Abraham's story. God tells him to sacrifice his son Isaac.
That's right.
Hold on. The son he was promised. After all this, God asks him to do that.
It's a test that's almost impossible to grasp. Why would a loving God ask that?
I don't know.
But it's the ultimate test of Abraham's faith, to give up the very thing that represents the fulfillment of God's covenant.
I can't even imagine. So what does Abraham do?
The video shows his silent obedience. He doesn't argue, doesn't question God's command, just prepares to do it.
It's heartbreaking, but also kind of amazing. It makes you think about, the depths of faith and how much we can really understand God's plan. Did Abraham think God would actually let him go through with it? Did he doubt God in this moment?
It's hard to say, but his actions, they tell us a lot about his trust in God.
And just as Abraham is about to make the sacrifice, everything changes. But that's a story for the final part of our deep dive. So we left off this really intense moment, right? Abraham about to sacrifice his son Isaac, to prove his faith. It's a scene that's just stuck with me.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff, all that tension and anguish. But then, just as Abraham's about to do it, carry out God's command, this ram appears.
A ram.
Yeah, caught in a thicket. It's like something out of a movie. This sudden divine intervention, God provides another sacrifice, saves Isaac's life.
What a relief that must have been for Abraham. Talk about an emotional roller coaster.
It's more than just that, though, right? This event, it points to something bigger, foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus, God's own Son, offered up for the sins of humanity.
It's wild how these stories from so long ago can have these deeper meanings, like they're connected to things that happened centuries later.
Exactly. They keep speaking to us. revealing new things as we dig deeper. But Abraham's story, well, it's in there. The video goes on to talk about the birth of Isaac, the son who was almost sacrificed, and then things get a little complicated. Hagar and Ishmael are banished.
That's the part I always have a hard time with. Sarah, Abraham's wife, she demands that Hagar, Abraham's servant, and their son Ishmael be sent away. It's hard not to see the jealousy and insecurity there, even in someone who walks with God.
Yeah, it's messy. Shows how complicated families can be, right?
Oh yeah.
And the harsh realities of life back then. But even so, you see God's compassion. He promises to bless Ishmael and make him the father of a great nation. So it's like the covenant wasn't limited to just one line of descendants.
Shows how expansive God's love is, and how He can, bring good out of tough situations.
And then Sarah dies. That's a big moment for Abraham. He buys a burial place for her,
Yeah.
Establishing a claim to the land God had promised.
It seems like a simple act, but I feel like it means something more.
Yeah, it's symbolic, right?
Yeah.
Solidifies the connection between Abraham's descendants and the promised land. It's like he's planting roots, making a claim to the future God has promised.
And finally, the story ends with the death of Abraham. He lived a long life, 175 years. He's buried in the same cave as Sarah.
Yeah.
But there's this detail in the video that I love it. Both Isaac and Ishmael, they come together to bury their father.
It's a beautiful image of reconciliation. Even after all the conflicts and separation, Abraham's sons, they unite to honor him. Makes you think about the possibility of, unity and peace among his descendants.
So after this epic journey, this incredible story, what's the takeaway? What makes Abraham's story still relevant, thousands of years later?
I think it's because at its core, it's about faith,
Right.
about obedience and trusting God's promises, even when those promises seem impossible. It's about asking tough questions, facing challenges with courage, and in the end, believing in a God who's bigger than our doubts and fears.
It's a powerful message, and his story, it sets the foundation for this whole idea of a chosen people, a nation chosen for a specific purpose, to be a blessing to all nations.
Right. And that promise, that promise of a universal blessing, it echoes throughout history. It points towards the coming of a Messiah, a descendant of Abraham, who would offer salvation to the whole world.
Amazing to think about how this ancient covenant, it still influences how we understand faith and spirituality today.
It really does. It makes you think about your own journey of faith. How do you respond to challenges and tests? What do you put your trust in?
Mm.
And what does it mean to be part of something bigger than yourself?
Those are great questions. Things to ponder. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Abraham. We hope you learned something new about this important figure, and that it's given you something to think about: the power of faith, obedience, and the enduring nature of God's promises.